Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2008 comedy sequel, Harold and Kumar, Escape from Guantanamo Bay. Now, this is one of those sequels that over recent years has actually started to get a bit of a cult following, and I can get it. It does have some clever moments of satire, especially about race and post 9/11 hysteria. But on the other hand, I don't really get why this is considered to be better than the first film by some people or on par with the first movie. Because to me, this is one of those sequels that is entertaining. It's a time waster. It's okay. It's decent enough. It's not one of the worst sequels out there, but it's still a couple steps down in quality from the first film in the franchise. And what's interesting is I did not like this film at all for a long time. When I first saw this years ago, I was really disappointed by the film. I thought it was not funny. I didn't like it. And that was after I saw the first movie and I really enjoyed it. I guess it just wasn't really something that I was that big on. And I actually thought it was one of the worst sequels that I could think of in terms of the comedy genre. But after revisiting it for the first time in forever, I don't feel that way anymore because when I saw it, I was still relatively young. I didn't really know a lot about politics. I really didn't know a lot about post 9/11 hysteria. I didn't really know about a lot of the things that this film is the best at, which is satirizing political views and a lot of that kind of stuff. It went way over my head, but as an adult, I'm able to appreciate that more, and that led me to appreciating this film more in general. But I still don't like it as much as the first film, and I just think it's an okay sequel at the end of the day because I think the writing is, other than the satirical elements and maybe some of the backstory for Kumar and his girlfriend, the writing is a little weak. It's a little flimsy. It's not anywhere near as strong in terms of the character building and the moments between Harold and Kumar as the first film is. There are also some moments where it does suffer from the same issues a lot of sequels do, where it's like, "Hey, remember this from the first movie? Remember that bag of weed that Kumar had a dream about? Well, now let's take it to 11, and now he's banging the bag of weed. Isn't that hilarious?" I'm like, not really. Having a threesome with a bag of weed, it was just stupid at that point. So, yeah, it does suffer from that kind of stuff, but it still has enough going for it and enough positives that it's at the very least an enjoyable watch. It's just not one of those films that I would turn back to a ton of times because it just doesn't have the same magic as the first film, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. It's directed by John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg, who wrote the first film, and you can tell that this is one of their first. This actually is their first directorial effort. There's a lot of moments in this where the direction looks very amateurish, looks very cheap, very kind of going through the motions, or really just working out the kinks, which happens a lot with first time directors. And as a result, there's a lack of genuine, grand moments of not necessarily hilarity, but moments where it feels like it's a theatrical feature. There's a lot of moments where it plays out visually very flat and very standard, like a TV movie or a made for cable sequel. And initially, this was intended to be a direct to video sequel. And you can see that. You really can. You can see it with the direction. You can see it with some of the visual effects. Um, I don't want to be too hard on the directors because, like I said, it's their first time. So it could have been a lot worse. But I am missing Danny's dynamic direction, his steady hand. I'm missing that with this sequel. And I don't understand why he wasn't able to be brought back either. Because it wasn't like he was sick at the time and he wasn't able to do it. They just didn't bring him back. Because he was doing a lot of made-for-TV stuff and direct-to-video sequels. He directed a Sean William Scott film about a tennis coach called Balls Out. So that's what he did. That's what he was doing. So they could have asked him to come back and direct it. Maybe he turned it down. That could be the other possibility. But regardless, yeah, the direction is not really on par with the first film. It's one of the negatives that I definitely do have with this movie. But it's not a total loss because there are some moments where the comedic timing does work, although there are a lot of moments where it's a little off. In terms of the pacing, directing, a lot of it is pacing. It's blocking things out. It's setting up your shots in a way where they flow freely and don't have a lot of roadblocks. And there are moments in this film where it just kind of stubs its toe repeatedly. So it'll stub its toe and then it's just standing there hopping around and waiting until the pain goes away until it keeps going on the path that it's on. And that's the kind of thing that happens with first time directors. They're still working out how to pace things and how to block things and how to move things along. Although there are some instances where directors just knock it out of the park right from the beginning and it just comes naturally to them. I don't think these guys were really in that same boat. I think they're really more tuned in and more at home when it comes to writing comedies than necessarily directing them. But it's not terrible for a first time, but it's not great either. And it is something that does hold the film back from reaching its full potential. I think the humor and a lot of the comedy, a lot of the jokes, I think would have landed better, at least the ones that were good ideas to begin with, if you had a more capable comedic director doing the job. Because John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg also wrote the film, so they're doing double duty here, and I think that also hurts the film in another way. It makes it so they can't focus on the script as much. So they can't focus on honing things and trimming jokes out or trimming jokes down. And that also affects the pacing and the timing of the film. There's a lot of really clever moments of political satire. The scene on the airplane with the old gal, the older lady, freaking out and hallucinating that Kumar is a terrorist is gold. That whole scene is gold. It's a amazing skewering of post 9/11 hysteria, where everyone is just freaking out about terrorism and taking it to extreme lengths where they would see anyone who looks like they might be Iraqi or Arab and terrorist, and it's a legitimately scathing bit of satire, and it's really well written and it's really well done. The whole bit with the bomb that he creates, but it's just a bong. It's a bong that he just made out of parts that he found lying around at home. He just MacGyvered this fucking bong, and it cracks open and marijuana gas is all over the cabin, and you got these older people freaking out and be like, poison gas, like that is hilarious. I crack up just thinking about that. But then they get to Guantanamo Bay, and then the film takes a really wrong turn. in terms of the tone and in terms of the comedy, in terms of the quality of it. Like, there are moments of brilliance in this film. That's what makes it kind of frustrating, because there's moments of brilliance when it comes to the writing, like Rob Corddry's character going to the hood and messing with this African American guy and like torturing him with grape soda because he's such a dumbass. He's thinking that that's actually gonna get some information out of this guy. Uh, so it's at its best when it is playing around with politics and satire. It's at its worst when it's trying to do any other form of humor. To be perfectly honest, a lot of it's just too juvenile, too crass to the point where it's just not funny. It's like that really bad joke in the first film where Harold and Kumar are flying around on the hang glider and they see a dick and balls that is carved into the corn on a cornfield down below. That was a stupid joke and it didn't land. Well, there's a lot more of that in Escape from Guantanamo Bay. Have you had your cock meat sandwich yet? You know, stuff like that. Repeated gag where if Kumar kicks somebody or if he gets kicked in the balls, they fart. Oh, dick fart. It's so fucking funny, man. It's just a dick fart. And I'm just like, this is just stupid. What are you, 5? So yeah, there are quite a few moments like that where the humor is just so crass and so dumb and just lazy. There's this whole scene with this friend in Florida who has a bottomless party, so all these women are walking around without their panties on, and and that's okay, that's fine. But then you have a bit where, oh, I'm bottomless too, and you see the friend's dick and balls, and you're just like, and it's all a prosthetic effect too. It's not real, so it's just dumb. It just looks stupid, and it just takes you out of the film. They also try to recreate certain bits that worked in the first film. Like, there's a whole scene where they wind up going to this redneck's house, and instead of it being a ugly freak who happens to have a hot wife, it's a normal looking guy and his hot wife, and on the outside the house looks like a dump, but on the inside it's all refined and looks amazing. And the big gag is not only that, it's that they have a cyclops in the basement, which is their inbred kid. And it's a good looking practical effect of the cyclops, but it's definitely trying to do the same thing. Doing a bit of horror, doing a bit of a horror spoof. Instead of it being with Freak Show, it's with the cyclops. So they're definitely trying to mine the same jokes. And the only other stuff that I think works with this script, other than the political satire, is the backstory where you have Kumar and his girlfriend, Vanessa, his ex. I think that's actually really well written. It's sweet. It's charming, especially the flashback scenes. And I think that's really where a lot of the heart lies with this sequel, because it doesn't really lie with the connection between Harold and Kumar, which is another thing that I'm really disappointed with when it comes to this movie, is that the connection between those two was so strong and just so powerful and great that they could make a scene where they're just singing a sappy song on the radio, into something that is genuinely special. You know, when they're singing "Hold On for One More Day," and here they still have the same chemistry. They still work well with one another, but the writing is not as strong when it comes to their banter and when it comes to their connection with each other. it feels out of place because there's a lot of moments where they are a little too mean to one another, to the point where it doesn't feel like it's lovably antagonistic. It just seems like they're being douchebags to one another, and that's not really the dynamic that was going on in the first film. So I feel a little bit of the spirit, a little bit of the spark was definitely lost. And I think a big part of it was due to the fact the directors were doing double duty. They were doing the directing as well as the writing. Uh, you have Neil Patrick Harris. He comes back as himself and gets into some more debauchery, and that had its moments too. But I would say I think that it's more effective in the first film because it's more of like a shock, like, oh, holy crap, like, it's Neil Patrick Harris. Like here when he shows up again, it's like, oh, it's a sequel thing. Oh, we gotta have Neil Patrick Harris in here. He's gonna do his shtick again. They try to throw you a curveball by having him get shot by Beverly DeAngelo, but it's still one of those things where sequel. We gotta have all the different parts that worked in the first film. It's not a good sign when the film opens up with Kumar on the toilet taking a shit. Like that's not really a good sign. That's not a good sign at all. And I just wish that this film was more simple, like the first film. This is an instance of a sequel that went bigger, and it wasn't necessarily better as a result. I think they should have just went to Amsterdam. I agree with a lot of other critics that I have seen reviews or read reviews of when it comes to this movie, when they say it would have been better off if they just went to Amsterdam. Yeah, you wouldn't have the political satire, but really what I want out of a Harold and Kumar film is not really politics, it's not political satire. What I'm looking for out of a Harold and Kumar movie is a fun road trip. It's with these two guys hanging out, going on an adventure. That's what I want. I don't really care about the political satire. Even though it's well done in this film, it just doesn't feel like it's in the right place when it comes to this particular franchise. And they try to have a villain with this white douchebag, like this rich white douchebag guy who is gonna marry Vanessa, and I didn't think that really landed that didn't work very well for me either. Like he's like, oh, I'm a douchebag, I get to do what I want, ha ha ha, and I'm rich. Like it just felt lazy. Like they just leaned so hard into the cliches of this character that it just became lazy and tired when it comes to the portrayal and the persona of this guy. Um, it's just one of those movies where, yeah, I can watch it mainly for Kal Penn and John Cho and for some of the other bits here and there, but it's not something that I would say I'm a big fan of. I don't hate it like I used to, but it's not one of my personal favorites. It's definitely a time waster. And I know I've repeated that numerous times, but that's really how I feel about it. It's just one of those movies I can put on and watch and laugh at a few scenes, and it'll go by. It'll pass the time, but it's not something that I'm going to be super invested in repeatedly or over and over. The cast, it's still strong. I mean, John Cho and Kal Penn, they step into their roles like they never left. The shoes still fit. It's not really their fault that the screenplay has these moments where their characters don't have the same chemistry, they don't have the same bond. Danneel Harris, not that Danneel Harris, it's a different Danneel Harris, as Vanessa Fanning. I thought she was honestly the standout of the cast in terms of the newcomers. I thought she worked really well with John Cho and Kal Penn, especially Kal Penn. I bought that she and Kal had a genuine romantic relationship, and they had a connection and a very strong bond. They were a really cute couple, and it was a great bit of casting. Rob Corddry as Ron Fox played the deputy security of Homeland Security. Um, he was pretty funny. It was a very on the nose character, but he really sold it the best he could. Roger Bart, who plays the vice chairman of the NSA, who's the rational guy compared to Fox, who's all impulse and all let's get him, let's everything's a everyone is a terrorist. We need to stop these terrorists. He's just going to extremes. And Roger Bart is the more even keeled guy. He was fine too. Eric Winter as Colton Graham, very bland, very one note, very wooden performance. I think maybe that was the point, but I actually probably would have liked that character better if the guy actually could act. He had all the acting ability of a porn star. Neil Patrick Harris, it was fun to see him again, but at the same time, we're mining the same comedy, where we're not really doing a lot different here. Oh, he's gonna get some drugs. He's gonna go try to get some hookers and blow and ha ha ha. They try to do something different with him seeing a unicorn because he's taking shrooms, but I don't know. I just thought it was just one of those things where I think there's a lot of people who really like that scene, but I'm just like, whatever. Paula Garcés, she's in it a little bit as Maria. Would have liked to seen more of her, because I think she has some good chemistry with John Cho, Kal Penn, and Danneel Harris. Like, one of my favorite scenes in this film is the scene where they go to Amsterdam at the end, and the four of them are just hanging out. Like, that's one of my favorite scenes in this movie. I love the vibe of that sequence, and I just wish that was more of the entire film. David Krumholtz and Eddie K. Thomas, they also come back as Goldstein and Rosenberg as a brief little cameo. I mentioned Beverly DeAngelo. She's in this as Sally, this owner of a whorehouse, who ultimately shoots Neil Patrick Harris in the back. And you have Christopher Maloney, who once again is unrecognizable. I did not know that was him. Holy shit. He plays the Grand Wizard in the film. Because there's a scene where Harold and Kumar have to disguise themselves as KKK members. And hilarity ensues. And that scene was fine, but I've seen that scene done better in a lot of other comedies. So it felt like that honestly was a tired gag, especially for 2008. But yeah, that's the main cast. Another thing I want to mention about the film that I wasn't really big on is the soundtrack. I liked a lot of the songs that they used for the first film. I mean, there were even songs they created specifically for the first movie, just to be an extra joke. There wasn't a lot of that here, and there was a lot of songs that were thrown in there that were just there for shock value, like "My Dick," and I'm just like, it's a song that talks about my dick. It talks about dick. Ha ha ha. It's so funny. And when you see a dick in the movie and there's dick farts. Ha ha ha. I'm not a fan of that kind of humor. So, yeah, I wasn't really big on the soundtrack. The cinematography by Darren Okada, it's fine. It's adequate enough. It's nothing that amazing. It's not gonna blow your mind. And it's not like the cinematography in the first film was like, oh my god. But there were some moments, though, where it was actually pretty well done and visually noticeable. It actually stood out in a good way. Here it's bland. It's just there. So is the editing by Jeff Freeman. Nothing about the editing is really that impressive either. It's just a serviceable job. The music by George S. Clinton, I don't remember anything. I don't remember any notes from the score. And the film is 102 minutes, And it honestly feels a little bit longer than that because of that timing I'm talking about. Moments where it just keeps stubbing its toe and you're just waiting for it to recover enough for it to actually move forward. And that just happens way too often. It gets kicked in the balls way too often and has to wait for the feeling to come back, and by that time it's just ruined all the pacing. It's ruined the timing. Uh, yeah, it's a comedy where the comedy is not really the best part of it. Mostly, I mean, there's some nice bits of satire, but really the best parts of this film are the moments where you have the rekindled connection that Kumar is trying to build with his ex Vanessa, or the moments with the two friends hanging out, or the four friends hanging out in Amsterdam. That's where the film shines the most. It's not really necessarily with the satire or the scenes where Harold and Kumar or Kumar is smoking a joint with George W. Bush. You know, that's just, this is one of those films where it went really big and it should have went smaller. That's just how I feel about it. And because it went really big, it didn't really stick the landing. So as a result, it's just one of those in the middle, just run of the mill, meh, okay, decent enough sequels. So that's my thoughts on Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.